You're listening to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast, episode 183. Coach Zoe and I get together for a Coach's Corner type discussion about veganism, our own workouts, and 4 problems in the fitness industry right now.
Welcome to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast, myth-busting and evidence-based advice to help you kick butt with your health and fitness on a vegan diet. Here's your host, Karina Inkster.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Karina, your go-to no BS vegan fitness and nutrition coach. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am very excited to chat with my coach colleague today. We both work with our clients, helping them to kick ass with their fitness and nutrition, and I feel very lucky to have her awesome self on my team. By the way, if you're in the market for vegan, weight neutral, inclusive, dark chocolate obsessed fitness coaches, then we are your team. Check out our coaching programs at karinainkster.com/coaching. Zoe Peled is on the KI team as coach and mastermind behind our client and community events. Zoe is a fitness coach and marketing and community engagement professional based in Vancouver, BC. In addition to her personal trainer certification, Coach Zoe has done additional studies in kettlebell training, vegan nutrition, and accessibility within the fitness industry. Her athletic background spans a wide range of endeavors. Coach Zoe has participated in 3 professional boxing matches, half marathons, Muay Thai, multi-day endurance hiking, distance swimming, and she currently holds a yellow belt in Krav Maga. She received her BFA in photography from Emily Carr University with additional studies in critical theory, examining the positioning and terminology around animals. Her personal studies continue to examine animal and human relationships, which has led her to both speaking engagements and internationally published work in the Antennae Journal of Nature in Visual Culture in the UK. Coach Zoe is the co-founder of Ban Fur Farms BC and facilitates events and community relations for numerous local vegan businesses. In 2018, she founded the Vancouver Vegan Resource Centre. Zoe has been vegan for 14 years and an animal rights activist for almost the same duration of time. And as always with my guests, I'm sharing Coach Zoe's favorite vegan meal. Right now, she's really into bowls. She says brown rice as a base, air fryer tofu and tempeh. Air fryer is life. A shit ton of veggies, and a healthy dose of avocado and hummus. And for those new to the show, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Karina Inkster, but most of our clients call me Coach K. I'm a fitness and nutrition coach, author of 5 books, 22-year vegan, and magazine writer. I'm the founder of KI Health and Fitness, where I and my team lead award-winning coaching programs that help vegans worldwide get super strong and build health habits they'll still hold at the age of 103. I hold a master's degree in Gerontology, specializing in health and aging. And of course, I host this show, available on all major podcast platforms, and also syndicated on radio in my city of Powell River, BC. My work has been profiled by CNBC, Huffpost, Healthline, Bustle, Livestrong, and the Instagram stories of vegans across the globe who are tired of hearing about diet culture and transformation boot camps and want to share evidence-based, weight-neutral, inclusive information instead. When I'm not eating dark chocolate or doing a ridiculous number of chin-ups, I perform and teach accordion, piano, and didgeridoo. I can also be found donning a giant inflatable T-Rex costume to video bomb my neighbor's wildlife cams. And my favorite vegan item right now is not a meal, but a snack. I am really into apple chips right now. I'm making them myself, and I've gone through something like 12 pounds of apples in 3 weeks. It's amazing. Here's my discussion with Coach Zoe. Coach Zoe, it's been a while since we've done a podcast episode. I am very stoked to have this conversation today.
It is long due, and for listeners' amusement, we should probably also share with them that we have been trying to find a time to coordinate this for many weeks.
That was a challenge.
Yes. Possibly months. But we're here. It's time. It is long due.
Yes. Agreed. And so we have many things on the agenda, but we also have nothing on the agenda. Weird how that works, right? We're just kind of like, let's do a coach's corner chat, see what comes up. But we also may have thought ahead a little bit and potentially have topics that will pop up. But I did want to ask you about your own training. Maybe we can talk about our own training and things that we're dealing with right now. Mm-hmm. We both have some let's call them unique challenges at the moment to deal with. And so
That is my favorite word.
we're still training, though. We're still doing our thing.
Mhm.
What does it look like for you?
So, my story is around the fact that right now I am training with what I will refer to as a unique knee. And I will preface this with the fact that before this happened, I had a few different goal areas, let's call them. So I was in the middle of a run streak, which was almost at 2 years. I was doing the gross grind a number of times per week that most would find sickening, with the with the intent of getting to a particular time by October. And at the beginning of August, I found myself in a position where I had a knee injury because of an unexpected kick, which is a very, very, very rare occurrence in the world where I received that kick. It was literally a circumstance of miscalculation and timing and movement, and all of these things aligned. But within the first few days of that injury and me seeing my physio, who is the most incredible human on the face of the planet, and I will also add that my physio knows me well enough to know that I am a person who has a pretty specific routine. And one of the things I love about her is the fact that she knows that. So if she's telling me that I am needing to stop something, it's because I need to stop doing that thing. So for me, that was no jumping of any kind, no impact, nothing with a super high incline. So that took obviously running and gross grind off the table. Within the first few weeks, it was no kicking, no receiving kicks. At that time, it was even a situation where I had really limited range of motion to do something like a full squat. So things where I
Yikes.
could be standing and have a bit of flexibility in my knee, that was okay. But many things were off the table.
Mm-hmm.
In the spirit of full transparency, it's not the first time I have incurred an injury and had to adapt training. The kind of automatic response part of your brain that says, oh my God, here are all these things I love. Here's all this training I've been doing, and I need to stop. And what else will I do? And kind
Yeah.
of shifting into that response and that headspace. And I don't want to call it a panic, but there's definitely a very strong response. Because I've been in this situation before, I also know that the minute that mindset begins to come in, I need to switch it. And what I need to switch it to is, yes, there is a huge list of things that I cannot do, but there's still a huge list of things that I can do.
Mm-hmm. That's key.
It is key, and it is hard. And I think it is made more challenging when perhaps you are in a situation where you're working towards a streak or a particular goal, or there's a timeline. And then all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
it's out the window. And you have no choice in the fact that that ended so unceremoniously.
Well, that's a good word for it, unceremoniously. We have no choice in the matter. And, this is something that we work with our clients on
A
all the
lot.
time. I mean,
A
shit
lot.
happens, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's an injury or whether it's something that someone's working on with their physio, whether it's an overuse thing, which is what I'm dealing with right now. There's always going to be a list of moves that someone can do, but it's really, really hard mentally to focus on those things
Mhm.
and not obsess over the smaller but not insignificant list of things you can't do at the moment.
Mhm.
So it's tough. Right now, actually, yesterday was my first day of 2 months with no swimming. So I'm going to do all of October and all of November with no swimming because I have to rest my overused biceps tendonitis shoulder.
Which is huge. Like, for
Yeah.
anyone who's listening to this podcast and is familiar with you and the things that you love and the things that you do
Mhm.
on a regular basis, that's big.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So the 3 things I love most in life, well, not actually, because Murray is not on this list, but the 3 things are accordion playing, swimming, and chin-ups. And so those 3 things together over many, many years have created biceps tendonitis, which is in the front of your shoulder, and there's nothing you can do about it other than rest it. And yeah, there are down the road options like, okay, so there's the steroid injections. I am getting an MRI at some point just to check. And, there are all these things. But really, when it comes down to it, if it's an overuse injury,
Don't use it.
you have to give it rest. Don't use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good reminder for, well, everyone listening and also our clients. I'm still going to do cardio. I also enjoy jump rope. Is it the same as swimming? No, but I'll do it for 2 months.
Yeah.
And I also play other instruments. I'll be practicing new piano pieces for the next month. My students, accordion students, already know I'm not going to be playing accordion for their next 4 lessons. So, on the one hand, those are the things I love doing. And what the heck is going to happen with my brain? One of my accordion students is also a swimmer, so I see her at the pool all the time. And just this morning, I was there doing hot tub after my non-swim cardio workout, and she was like, "Are you going to be okay? Like, are you going to be mentally all right not swimming for 2 months?" So we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. And I mean, you mentioned something which I have been thinking a lot about and is kind of on my list of things that are causing me some frustration that we're seeing in the industry
Mhm.
right now, which
Mhm.
we'll get to later. But this is the fact that I think a lot of the time, and we understand why this happens, a lot of the time we look at this concept of, oh, I'm gonna throw some big umbrella terms in here, okay? We look at this
Okay.
concept of overall wellness and being fit and being strong, or let's say balanced. A lot of the time those concepts are portrayed in a way where they're kind of only comprised of what we eat and maybe how we train.
Mhm.
And there are several other pieces to that pie. And the one which doesn't receive as much attention or near as much celebration and encouragement as it should is rest.
Mhm. Agreed. It's kind of this BS idea that we all need to be firing on all cylinders at all times. And if you're not doing that, you fail.
Mhm. And the particular thing that I have this connected to on this list, which I am pointing to in front of me, is the rhetoric and the very problematic tendencies of this messaging that we see around push past the pain, be
Mhm.
better than your excuses, no excuses, get it done. Well,
Mhm.
no, because we will unpack that in its entirety later, but if your body is asking you to rest, that's because your body really needs you to do that. And if you don't do that, chances are high it's going to put you in a state where you are further injured or your injury
Mhm.
intensifies, which is going to keep you away from doing the things that you love ultimately for even a longer period of time.
It's so true. These things that we're doing right now, like adjusting our training, having different goals when it comes to the grouse grind or anything else, not swimming for 2 months, it's in the interest of future Coach Zoe and future
Mhm.
Coach K.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, sure, it's going to suck right now to some degree, but it's going to be worse if we don't do these things.
Mm.
So I'm 100% with you. Why don't
Mhm.
we dive into, like, while we're here, let's dive into this whole concept. I'm assuming it was worded something like what you've already said, push beyond the pain,
Yeah.
push beyond excuses. Like how would you word what the problem is?
So I think that the problem is that when we see a lot of this messaging, it's basically framing workouts and movement in this be all end all manner. So if you have a certain number of workouts, you need to get them done no matter what. It doesn't matter if you are tired, if unexpected things came up, if you are in pain, if you had a major trauma, if you had a later night than expected. Based on this messaging, the concept is push through. There is no valid reason why you cannot do this workout. There are no excuses. And if you concede to those reasons, you have ultimately failed.
So here's something that I think about when I discuss this subject, or when I think about it, when we talk about it with our clients. I feel like we're pretty good at taking context into account. So all the things you
100%.
just mentioned, right? Like relationships and trauma and life events and work and responsibilities, and like, the list is 300 items long at least. But where is the line, if there even is one, because I'm not sure there is. There's lots of gray areas. But
Always,
like,
always.
how do you decide for yourself? Let's talk about it in terms of ourselves. So where's the line for you between kind of being a lazy bum, even though you know you want to do the workout, but your brain is just like, nah, let's keep sitting on the couch. It's more comfortable here. Versus, hey, I have an injury that I need to legitimately rest. I probably shouldn't work out today.
Ooh. Okay. Good response. Good response. So I would say for myself, where I would take it is an exploration of, I want to kind of separate the concept. And I think that this is also something that's missing from this messaging. And the thing that's missing is an excuse and a reason are not the same thing.
Good point.
So for me, if I know that I'm supposed to go to a class in an hour, and maybe I'm feeling a bit sleepy, maybe I kind of didn't want to go, but I still signed up, I'm humming and hawing, that is a very, very different self-dialogue than, hey, I have this injury and I should not be going to that class. It's a very different self-dialogue than, wow, I was supposed to leave in 10 minutes and I just got a phone call with some really bad news and I'm not in a good headspace to be engaging in movement.
Totally.
And that separation of excuse versus reason, I think that's critical, and I don't think that separation is encouraged.
This is genius. This is like a mind hack. I hate the word hack, by the way, because I think it implies easiness or quickness, or, that you've somehow gamed the system. But sometimes it's just the best word to use. It's still always going to be work when we're talking about intentional movement and nutrition and all these things. They're never hacks. But anyways, Coach Zoe has just proposed a mind-blowing mind hack that you can use.
Let's call it a reframe. Let's call it a
reframe. There you go. That's much better. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe it's along the lines of what I would use for myself in this instance, where, by the way, this is a wave a magic wand ideal scenario, which isn't always the case, as we know, right? We humans are not rational creatures 24/7. Or at all, is the argument. So, sometimes you're just chilling and your brain is telling you, nah, you don't feel like working out today. And that's legit. And other times your brain is telling you exactly the same thing, but you trick it into doing your workout anyways. So anyways, what I try to do is I think about how I'm going to feel after the workout. I think about future me. Am I going to feel worse after doing this workout? Like, if I had a migraine, if I had like really, really bad allergies during the summer and I were to do an outdoor jump rope session or something, yeah, I'm going to feel like shit afterwards. In those cases, I'm not going to do it. If I think that I'm going to feel better or the same after a workout, then I'll do it.
Yep. And I think a really important part of this, and I think this is something that you just kind of exemplified in how you responded, is that when we're in a position, whether or not it's you and I coaching, or you and I as friends, having a dialogue about, oh, I'm not really feeling like working out today.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's important that sometimes, and this is not to further complicate the reframe, a reason for you and a reason for me are going to be very, very different.
Oh, that's a good
So
point. Yes.
the reason that you may not want to engage in a workout or be able to with those same circumstances, I might be fine, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. So I think when we're participating in conversations around this subject with other folks, it's also important to not necessarily dictate or assume experience, but open up opportunities for them to determine what is excuse versus reason.
Love it. Freaking love it, Coach Zoe. Genius. Okay, so let's go into some of the other things you have on your list. Why don't we just kind of start it off? Don't go too deep. We'll kind of give our general thoughts, and then we can have a discussion on point 2 in Coach Zoe's list of
Okay.
things that are currently fucked up in the fitness industry.
Okay. So, point number 2, and you will notice this quickly, listeners will notice this quite quickly too. There may be there are kind of some relationships, and there are some similar components between these few things. So,
Okay.
this one is, I have seen, and perhaps this is due to the glories of the algorithm, due to more recipe content, what have you. There is a very, 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 very high volume of recipes on the internet and on social media. And I am seeing more of them being labeled with things like the guilt-free version or
Mm.
the better version. And a lot of the time, we're seeing these terms attached to particular types of food. So, better brownies,
Mm-hmm.
no guilt carrot cake, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And this just opens up a whole slew.
It sure does. And so this is not just within the vegan world. This is
Correct.
nutrition in general, like Instagram at large, whatever you want to call it, right?
Correct. So it is something I have observed within the space of vegan content creators, but not exclusively.
Right. Because I was thinking a lot of times guilt-free is used in an ethical sense, like from a
Yes.
vegan perspective.
Mhm.
But in this case, we're talking about treat foods that are labeled, quote, guilt-free because they have different ingredients in them, presumably.
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly.
Mhm.
Or because of those ingredients, it is now being framed as acceptable or more acceptable to eat this. And the suggestion being that with this version, you shouldn't feel bad, or you shouldn't feel guilty, because
Mhm.
literally it's literally called the better version.
Which also assumes that the previous original version, A, is worse, and B, should instill guilt.
Exactly. Exactly. And that, I mean, that is hilarious in and of itself, because uh, though it completely depends on the recipe, I think it's also safe to note that sometimes what is offered as the quote unquote better version, in terms of taste and the
Yes,
experience and the pleasure of that food, a lot of the time it does not taste good.
I agree. Just go for the original treat food and enjoy it without any guilt, without any shame. What these things don't take into account is context. Look,
Hmm.
if all you're eating is what we would call treat foods, fun foods, whatever you want to term it, not junk, not cheats,
Treat.
Those are
Yes.
negative terms.
Yes.
Treat foods, fun
Yes.
foods. If that's 99.8% of your diet, okay, maybe it's not in line with your fitness goals,
Mhm.
depending on what they are.
Mhm.
But if the vast majority of your diet is not those foods,
Mhm.
it ain't gonna kill you
No.
to have them once in a while.
No, no. And I believe it's actually it's quite revealing that, from what I've seen at least, and I acknowledge I have not seen every recipe that exists in the realm of the internet and social media, that we only see these terms attached to certain types of foods.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily see, recipes for guilt-free salad or
Yeah. Guilt-free steamed broccoli.
exactly. Exactly. And that in and of itself is bringing us back to this super super icky place where we're placing this kind of uncomfortable structure of morality around which
Mm-hmm.
foods we should be platforming and which ones we shouldn't. And
And which foods we should be enjoying and which ones
exactly.
we shouldn't, because this all means nobody enjoys steamed broccoli
Mhm.
or no one enjoys salads. And the only
Yeah.
reason we're eating those things is A, B, and C
Yeah.
health reasons.
Yeah.
And hey, it's fair. Not everyone loves every food.
Mhm.
Steamed broccoli is not going to be everyone's thing. That's cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
But maybe it is for some people. I have a coach friend whose favorite food is broccoli, legitimately.
I mean, throw it in the air fryer. I'm
Mm-hmm.
in. Throw
Yeah,
anything in the air fryer and I'm in.
me too.
With the
Oh my
exception of
God.
a few things. But
Well,
what I would love to see, and of course this is a lofty goal with many different layers to it, because food is something with many layers to it for every single person, is
mm-hmm.
especially within the, fitness, movement, wellness spaces, if you will. I would like to maybe see a bit more diversity in how those foods are represented. And I would love to see practitioners talking about certain foods in a way that, doesn't imply that you can, quote, you can only eat these things if you are eating
Mm-hmm.
the version we have deemed to be guilt-free or better.
Guilt-free. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So interesting. I mean, it kind of reminds me of ethical veganism. Like I always say, I'm not vegan for health reasons. I went vegan for ethical reasons. So did you.
Hmm.
We're in this for a moral standpoint and to eat in a way that aligns with our values.
Hmm.
And hey, some of the bonus effects, like more fiber and getting all the nutrients we need, potential anti cancer effects, like, okay, those are nice bonuses,
Hmm.
but those are not the reasons I'm vegan or I
No,
maintain veganism.
no. And it's kind of connected to something that we have spoken about before, and something you've spoken about in other podcast episodes, around the almost purity idealism of it.
Mm hmm. Mm hmm.
And a great example, I've been thinking about how I can talk about this without naming names and strategically leaving out details.
Mm hmm.
So an acquaintance of mine told me about a friend of theirs who was working at an event, and this individual was working at a booth, and this particular booth had a lot of a lot of baking and food that they were vending. A guest approached and asked if there was any oil in
Mm
in the items.
hmm. Mm hmm.
And when the individual working at the booth said yes, this particular guest just unleashed and, started sharing their perspective around the fact that vegan food shouldn't have
Mm
oil in it, and
hmm.
this is an event that is supposed to be centered around health and wellness, and these things should be oil free. And they I'm going to speak respectfully. They talked very passionately for quite a while. And
That is very respectful of you.
it is. It is. Because I will acknowledge I don't know their story or context. And I will also acknowledge that, yes, there are some individuals for many different reasons, perhaps medical or health conditions. Perhaps they should not be eating a lot of oil or no oil at all. However, the overall demonization of it and the fact that, again, if you are cooking with this thing, then it's taking away from that purity idealism. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
There's a lot of that in veganism. There's a lot of that in the nutrition world at large, within all the
100%.
different factions of like
Yes.
keto and carnivore and whatever the hell is the in thing now. It's the same concept. It's like, okay, if you're not doing 1, 2, and 3
Yeah.
exactly my way, then you're
Mhm.
doing it wrong. And it's
Yeah.
applied to veganism a lot. I think the same concept can apply to, quote, whole foods, plant-based eating, where all so-called processed food is off the table. And by the way, there's no definition of what processed food
Thank
is, which is a
you. I
whole
was
other
just going to throw
discussion.
that in. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right? And so again, this is an entirely health-based with some issues, by the way, because there are lots of research studies that show certain types of, quote, processed food, including things like breakfast cereals and whole grain bread, are actually health positive for us.
Yes.
It's very problematic to assume that this is a one size fits all. And in this case, if you're not doing veganism, whole foods, plant based,
Mhm.
then you're doing veganism wrong.
Exactly. Exactly. And another part of the equation, which I will throw in just so it is included, but I would also love to, of course, acknowledge it. It could be a separate episode in and of itself, is the whole purity concept in relationship to access and food access. And when we compare, and of course this depends on where you're getting your groceries and a few other factors, but comparatively, if you send me into the store with $50 and you say, here's a list of only whole food plant-based sources, nothing packaged, nothing processed, etc., and you send me in with $50 and say, okay, maybe get some whole foods, but we'll get some packaged stuff, we'll get some processed stuff as well. If I am shopping for myself and maybe a couple of family members, what the volume of food that I can get is going to be very, very different in those two circumstances. And I think that when we talk about that concept of purity, we leave out the fact that folks have different access considerations when it comes to food, and that includes vegan food.
100%. And it's actually very interesting timing that you bring this up because tonight, like in 2.5 hours, I'm going to an event at a local cafe, which is a book launch panel for my friend Andrea Bennett, who just published a book called Hearty, which is essays about food security, food insecurity.
Okay.
It's not vegan centric,
Yeah.
even though they are mostly vegetarian. So plant forward, I guess I could call them. Anyways, it's just interesting timing that this event is happening with a panel, including someone from a farm locally, so they can talk about growing food, including a postdoctoral researcher who actually studies with one of our podcast guests who was on the show, Annalise Weiler. So it's one of her postdoc students, and someone from the Tla'amin First Nation here, and then Andrea, who wrote the book. So it's going to be this like really cool panel discussion, book signing event all around food insecurity and food security,
There you
not
go.
directly around veganism, but it's a huge topic. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that could be a whole episode on its own.
And I think that it may very well, maybe after this conversation.
Maybe this conversation is like mining for further podcast topics.
Which seems to happen
Yes.
every single time that we have a conversation.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so what is point 3 on
Oh,
things
okay.
that are not great in the fitness industry at this time?
I'm going to read this out word for word as I have it on my list because previously I
Okay.
paraphrased, but I think this is pretty much spot on.
Okay.
Can we please stop assigning worth to a workout based on when in the day we do it? Specifically,
Mm.
the concept that the earlier in the morning you do a workout, the more value it has or the more impressive you are.
Ooh, I like this. Why is it that we have this concept that if you're working out at 4 a.m., you're more badass than someone working out at 4 p.m.? Where does that even come from?
Because my theory on this is even though it is wildly inaccurate and very perverse for so many reasons, the rhetoric that has been cultivated kind of gives the idea that, you're showing an element of sacrifice. I am more
Mhm. Mhm.
committed because I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm up at the crack of dawn before everyone else is so that I can work out for 2 hours. And I'm more invested in this because I'm doing that and you're not.
Mhm. That's a great point. I put a post on Instagram not that long ago, probably 3 weeks or something,
Yep.
where like I'm a morning person as it is, right? I mean,
Sure.
that
Yes.
happens. I wake up at 6 a.m. no matter what time I go to bed. So
Yeah.
I have to go to bed at what my friends call a geriatric hour
Yeah.
because I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. regardless.
Anyways. Yeah.
Not everyone has that, right? I mean, my husband Murray is the exact opposite. He's a night owl, less than he used to be, but
Mhm.
there's no frickin' way he'd be able to go to sleep before
No.
11.
No.
And no frickin' way he'd be conscious before 7:30, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, the point is I put this Instagram post up just for fun, being like, you know what? Sometimes I have to practice piano at 6 a.m. So it's me with headphones at my keyboard, just being like, I have a busy day. And what that means in this instance is I have to practice. And the little timestamp on the Instagram post was like 5:57 a.m. or something. Does this happen regularly? Hell no.
No.
But
Yeah.
it got an interesting response versus other photos of myself practicing that I've put at more reasonable times. Everyone's like, oh, that's nice. That's nice. But no one is taking the time to email me personally, which happened because of this post, by the way, to be like, oh my God, this is so inspiring. Shout out, I'm not going to name names, but shout
Yeah.
out to
Yeah.
the listener slash follower who emailed me. It actually made my week hearing from someone, who felt inspired to do what she needed to do and to
Mhm.
fit in the important things.
Mhm.
But that's really what it's about. It's fitting in what you know is important. It doesn't actually matter that it was 6 a.m. It matters that I changed my day around. I was actually going out of town for the whole day to Nanaimo. And so it's either practicing at 6 or it's not practicing at all. And
Yes.
I think the point,
Yeah.
what this follower slash listener got out of that was,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, okay, so sometimes you need to change your routine.
Mhm.
And I made sure to tell her in my response, I think that the operative term in my caption was sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes I have to practice at 6, otherwise it's not going to happen. And
Mhm.
I might not even want to use the term have to practice. I get to practice. It's a
Mhm.
thing that I get to do
Mhm.
as someone who can set her own work hours, for example. I'm pretty lucky to do that.
Mhm.
So I think you're right that there's definitely this glamorization of sacrifice,
Mhm.
which is why people follow pro athletes. They want to know everything about their training.
Yes.
They want to know how fucking hard it is. It's just glorifying personal sacrifice when what actually works long term is doing something that you enjoy
Mhm.
and doing something that isn't going to break you down over time,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're going to bed at midnight and waking up at 5 just to work out, that ain't sustainable.
That is it. And I know for a fact that this has come up in conversation. I mean, this has come up with our clients and also on the blog and in a
Mhm.
podcast situation. And I love how you responded to this because, as is the case with so many subject areas here, It's about finding what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a human who goes to bed early and it feels good to get up earlier and you can do that and get an adequate number of hours of sleep, there's nothing that says you shouldn't. The issue for me lies in the idea or assumption that because this person is getting up at 4 a.m., you need to do
Mm-hmm.
that at any cost to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
including going to bed late for whatever logistical reasons. You can't go to bed early. You're going to bed late. You're not getting enough rest. You are sacrificing that rest in order to get a workout. And ultimately, if you do that on a regular basis, you might as well not do the workout because
Mm-hmm.
the detriment that sleep deprivation can have long term is
Exactly.
is kind of going to cancel them out.
Probably. Do you think that some of it comes from this like hustle culture, business bro, morning routine,
Hmm. Hmm.
like do the things that the billionaires do before 5 a.m. kind of bullshit? Like, is
Hmm.
some of that kind of mixed in here?
Absolutely. On one level, we could maybe even connect it to that purity concept and this idealization. Maybe that's a better term to apply to it. But
Mm-hmm.
realistically, I mean, I know for myself personally, there there are several nights during the week when I'm in class, okay? So, a few
Mm-hmm.
nights a week
Mm-hmm.
when I go to Krav Maga specifically, which I love dearly, and I love that the classes are later. I mean, I love the classes for several reasons. One of them is that they're later because it is more conducive with my schedule. I usually get home
Mm-hmm.
around 20 past 10, which means after I wind down, after I have some food, we're not going to bed before 11.
Mm-hmm.
If I was an individual who was hell-bent on getting up at 4 o'clock,
Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of assigning value to a workout based on the time of the day when we do it and also how long it is, because I think there's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
apparently more value, if you're in the gym for 3 hours, bravo.
That's right.
Let's
And a
like
10-minute
let's
workout doesn't count.
exactly. And let's change that. Let's as an industry and as participants in this industry in so many different ways, let's change how we assign value to a workout. It's
I
time to
like
bring in
that.
some new factors.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It also reminds me of assigning value to us as humans based on our fitness level, on
Yes.
the workouts that we
Yes.
do. A lot of us have as part of our identity that we're boxers or we're swimmers or we're strength trainees or we're coaches or we're all of those things. And yeah, of course, these are very important pieces of our identity, but it's problematic when these things start interfering with your idea of worth as a human.
Mhm.
Like, what point is there if I can't work out?
Mhm.
Which a lot of folks get into, going back to our injury discussion, when there are things they can't do anymore, it now affects their self-worth. That's a
Yes.
problem.
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so what is the fourth issue in the fitness industry right now?
Okay, I'm gonna let you pick. Okay. So
Okay.
I have two. One of them is related, it's another kind of nutrition, food related one.
Mhm.
And the second is related to something that we do as coaches.
Ooh, let's do that one.
Okay.
Immediate choice. I'm
Okay.
intrigued about the coaching piece.
Okay. So this one I do need to paraphrase because I have written down some very nonsensical notes about this.
Okay.
And what this one relates to is I I think there's an opportunity. Let's always look at it as an opportunity for folks working in this space to be more cognizant of sharing content about their respective training/workout journeys, whether it be before and after pictures, which, we both feel a certain type of way about, whether or not they share metrics around what they're doing. And I think it's important, with everyone, but specifically with coaches, to make it clear that just because this is my bar, it may not be your bar. And I was very hyper aware of that when I was doing something like the run streak. And when I did talk about it on social media, to always add a bit of a reminder that this is something I'm doing. It's not to say that you need to do it, you can do it, or that you want to do it. And
that's a great point. I think the little disclaimer piece, or like the caveat, or the thing that you just mentioned that you kind of tack on to, hey, I'm doing this thing, by the way, that little piece, I think, makes all the difference. I don't think we're saying that we as coaches should never share what we're doing in terms of our own training.
Yes, 100%.
It's just the way that it's framed. And we need to remember what it's like to be an audience member, because we're also consumers of other people's content, of course. So we see this all the time. But it's a really interesting point, because it applies to everything, not just training. Just because this nutritional thing works for me doesn't mean I should expect the entire population to follow A, B, and C. So it's definitely a good reminder. And I think we can still share these things, but in a way that just, what do you think is the right word? Like qualifies or describes individuality.
And I would say acknowledges it and recognizes it. Because I think, as coaches and also as humans, if I'm sharing something about a physical feat, so if it's the a run, or if it's the grouse grind back when that was accessible to me, my personal intent in sharing that is not to give the idea that this is something you need to be doing, and this is definitely the way you need to do it, and this is the time that you need to get on your gross grind as well. I'm sharing that because, there's an element of celebration, there's an element of accountability. Maybe there are some people who want to do that at some point and are looking for some more information on that.
100%.
And I think you need to be aware of that. I think you need to be aware of that, as you said, when you're sharing anything on social media, because
I love that.
The way that we intend something to be received and the way that someone might receive it, we don't necessarily have control over both of those things in the same way.
That's a very good point. So I feel like we have about 14 more podcast episodes we have to do based on what we discussed.
Minimum.
At least. So let's leave it there for today. But I look forward to more conversations.
Okay, me too.
If folks are interested in sending us ideas for future Coach's Corner podcasts, they can do that at karinainkster.com or on Instagram or whatever smoke signal, carrier hamster, whatever option.
I was gonna say carrier pigeon, and then I thought, I don't know if that is ethical for me to say.
I know. Yes. We have carrier hamster as an option for how people want their messages delivered on our website. And someone actually said, I'm not sure that's vegan. I'm like, dang, that's a good point. So I might have to change that.
Consenting carrier hamsters in situations where they only complete that task if they have shown the desire through their own autonomy to do so.
Exactly. Whew. Well, Coach Zoe, as always, awesome to speak with you. Thanks so much. And I look forward to more conversations.
Oh, I cannot wait for the next 5, 10, 15, and many more.
Thank you again, Coach Zoe, for joining me on the show. Connect with us at our show notes, nobullshitvegan.com/183, and check out our coaching programs at karinainkster.com/coaching. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the No Bullshit Vegan podcast at nobullshitvegan.com.